Bonjour, membres du comité. Je rappelle à l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
I'd like to call the committee to order. This is the 13th meeting of our committee. As you know, today we'll be starting our first meeting on the study relating to open data. And we'll be hearing this morning from representatives of the Treasury Board, represented by Ms. Charette, who is Chief Information Officer of the Government of Canada, along with Mr. Stephen Walker and Mr. Sylvain Latour. You have the floor then, and we'd like to thank you for coming to the meeting. And at a later point, we'll begin our question period on your presentation. You have the floor. Ms. Charette. Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a great honor for me to be here before the committee today to talk to you about our successes and the work that we have done on open data for the government.
Here with my two colleagues to talk about open data. So I'll introduce Stephen Walker, who is the Senior Director for our Information Management Policy sector, as well as for Open Government at TBS Secretariat. And with him to his left is Sylvain Latour, who is the Director of our Open Government Open Data Secretariat at TBS. So the way we have, that we propose to cover the material this morning is that we have a presentation in two parts, and we propose to have a demo. So we will go through the first part of our presentation, et vous avez devant vous, je pense.
And I believe that you have received a written copy of the presentation that will sum up the key concepts relating to open data.
On open data, what are the key concepts? Then we will stop and we will do a demonstration, and you've noticed the screens in the room, and we'll have a live demonstration. Stephen and Sylvain will go through our actual open data portal and show you some examples of the data and how the portal works. And then we'll revert to the presentation just to do a summary of essentially what are the different initiatives going on within the federal government and with our colleagues across Canada and other jurisdictions, and in fact what are our initiatives internationally on the open data front. And of course we'd be delighted to answer whatever questions the committee has. So that's what we propose by way of the three-way or the three-section approach. Before I do start into the first part of the presentation, I would like to say that we've just completed a very exciting weekend. This weekend, on February 28th, Minister Clement launched the Canadian Open Data Experience, which is a Apathon challenge that brought together finally 927 registered participants from across Canada, from universities in all provinces across Canada, to essentially try and see what kind of applications they could develop using Canada's open data information or published on our portal. It was a very exciting weekend, and at the end of the weekend, preliminary reports suggest that we certainly have over 100 different apps that were developed and that will be validated and vetted and will be the subject of tough competition. And the finale of code will be March 28th in Toronto, where the 15 finalists will review their apps with the judges, and the finalists will be awarded a prize. So this is very exciting because this would be our first national code apathon. Different provinces and cities have had a few, and there have been a number of efforts across Canada, but this is the first on a pan-Canadian basis. So I think that the success of code certainly is a testimony to the enthusiasm and the interest in Canada's open data portal and the information that we make available to Canadians. So with that, I will go into the presentation and help to hopefully demystify this. So we'll be doing section 1. So on page 3, open data fundamentals, and I apologize if some of you may be well aware of this, but we weren't sure, so we thought we'd bring everyone to a certain level of knowledge. So what is raw data? So we start off with raw data is machine-readable data at the lowest level of integration that can be reused alone or mashed up, as the term is, with other data in innovative ways. So the government either generates or collects and aggregates a vast amount of raw data. And so the best example of raw data would be weather data that we collect through sensors and radar and a variety of other means that we collect, and we turn that into raw data, numerical data that is available for further processing and manipulation. So what is metadata? Metadata is data about data, and metadata is key to the potential of open data. So without metadata, the vast numbers of data sets and information that are available are not as useful. It's very important to describe the contents of a data set and to describe the specific kinds of information in each field of a data set that is presented, so that when application developers go to the data set, one, they know they're finding the right data set with the right kind of data. They know how to interpret the different fields, and that's an important part of using the data effectively. So in Canada, making our data available in an open data portal first involves producing metadata in both official languages so that app developers can quickly understand what is the nature of the data set and can use it appropriately. And finally, what is open data? Well, open data is the practice that takes the raw data and the metadata and makes it available through a portal, as is the case of data.jc.ca, that allows users to search through the portal for the right data sets and allows them to browse and then to download the data in machine usable formats so that they can develop programs and information systems that can manipulate it and produce other uses for it and greater advantage. So going on to page 4, the open data movement is quite well developed today. In October 2013, McKinsey Global reported that the potential for open data to generate economic value is significant. This is McKinsey's view, and certainly we have seen through open data efforts in the US, in the UK, in Canada now, and all over the world, we've seen the rise of many businesses through the generation of apps that basically use open data and that are now, widely available through different online stores and so on. And certainly, all of the large consultancies speak to the fact, including Deloitte, that that data is the new capital of the global economy, and that the ability to harness the vast amounts of data that we do generate is really a large potential for Canada and as well for society as a whole. So moving on to page 5, just to give you a recap of the history. We have long been aggregators and generators of data in Canada, and in fact, the concept of open data started around 1995 with the important stores of geophysical and environmental data that we already collect and manipulate through NRCan and Environment Canada. In California, of course, in the US, in 2007, open data started to become an important movement, and in fact, with President Obama's first term, was really the first important, I guess, national foray into open data with his mandatory policy on the release of open data. And the U.S. Launch of that direction certainly stimulated open data movements in the UK, internationally, and certainly we watched in Canada and also thought that this was a valuable movement to embrace. So it's really been a movement that has grown very quickly, and it is certainly in Canada stimulated quite a bit by our work by cities, and cities are very active in open data in Canada, as well as by the provinces and ourselves in the federal government. On page 6, open data certainly is well established internationally. As you may know, the Open Government Partnership, first launched in 2011 by the U.S. and Brazil as co-chairs, was a strong platform for further developments in open data and making governments accountable, open and responsive to citizens. The World Bank has similarly opened its data and knowledge and research and is a strong supporter of open data and a supporter of all of our efforts. The Open Knowledge Foundation is a civil society organization dedicated to promoting open data and open content. The OECD has also embraced open data and was present at the 2013 Open Government Partnership Conference in the UK. And certainly the World Wide Web Foundation is, of course, a strong believer in open data. So on page 7, just to give you a capsule of open data in Canada, we're quite pleased with Canada's progress in this front. 4 provinces, British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec, have open data portals, and over 30 cities. And in fact, certainly Vancouver was one of the forefronts, or the first leaders in open data in Canada, and continues to be very dedicated to that. But we're pleased with all of the municipal efforts, including the City of Ottawa, which is also working hard at open data. On page 8, just to kind of contrast, what was it like? How could civil society access our data sets, the data sets that the government creates and aggregates and made available prior to open data? So before open data, the government was already publishing data, but in a different way and in a much smaller and less accessible way. So certainly weather data from Environment Canada has been available for some time, as were maps from Natural Resources Canada. But what you see on the diagram on the right is really one of the fundamental issues of the problem. Each individual department collected and prepared data and made it available on their own individual websites, not always prominently, and often without sufficient, or if you will, standard metadata that describe the contents, not always with appropriate search engines to access it. So from a user's perspective, it wasn't easy to answer the question, what kind of data is available from the government on topic A or on topic B. The users would routinely have to go through multiple sites, go quite deep into the sites, and then the data was not necessarily in machine-readable format. So while they could visualize it, they couldn't really use it and create an information system. Finally, an additional issue that users had to tackle with at the time was that every individual website made the data available under slightly different licensing terms. And the licensing terms are very critical to open data, and the ability to have an open license that is recognized across Canada is really key, that makes the data available for reuse without restriction on the same terms. And so that was the situation of data before open data. On page 9, starting in 2009, we started to tackle these with these questions, and in fact started working on our first view of the license and the first view of a portal that could potentially make this data available. So I'm going to jump to page 11. Why is open data important for the Government of Canada? Certainly, we're strong believers that open data helps to reinforce accountability and government's agenda. Certainly, we are convinced that it does generate economic value for Canadians. It is aligned with our digital strategy as we are working with our colleagues across government, and it is a key catalyst for innovation in science and technology. We are aligned with our international partners, and the success of CODE, I think, supports the fact that Canadians are equally aligned with it. On page 12, just to highlight the key milestones from government perspective on open data, in March 2011, the government announced our first open government initiative, and at the time, our first open data portal. That was our first pilot. We launched it with much fewer data sets and with a first version of the license. In April 2012, Canada joined the International Open Government Partnership formally, and we published our first action plan on open government at that time. And the action plan on open government includes, of course, a number of commitments on open data. In June 2013, the Prime Minister formally adopted the Open Data Charter with other G8 leaders at the Low Earn Summit in Northern Ireland. So just to recap on this part of the presentation, and before we go to the portal, to the demo of the portal, just to say on page 13 that we have continued to work hard on open data since our joining of the Open Government Partnership. And in fact, we launched this June the second generation open data platform. We now have about 200,000 data sets from 27 departments. We launched with 6 departments and their data sets. Our search capability is state-of-the-art, and we have incorporated social media features onto the site. So we're very pleased with our new portal. In terms of GC resource management data, the expenditure database was launched in April 2013 to provide Canadians with financial information and departmental spending over the last 3 years. And we continue to add data sets through all topic areas. We are working hard right now on a directive on open government. So this will be policy that will help governments, help agencies, departments and agencies to create a better inventory of their data assets and the information to be published, and provide an implementation timeline for them to achieve this. So that will be an important part of our Open Government Action Plan commitments, and we're hopeful to see that in the new fiscal year. And finally, our Open Government License, the second version of which was issued in June last, and the new license is aligned with the Creative Commons license. It's plain language, clearly states the conditions for the reuse of data, and aligns with all international best practices. So that's kind of a quick primer on open data. And before we go to the demo, y aurait-il des questions que vous voudriez poser?
Are there any particular questions that you would like to put before we begin this demo?
Est-ce que les députés ont des questions?
Do the members have any questions before we hear we see the demonstration? Yes, I do have one question to understand the vocabulary. On one of the pages, objective number 3 for 2015, what does mapping mean? What is understood by this term? I'm referring to the annex here, the third point. Contribute to an exercise of a mapping you're raising a point. I believe that it is a term that was introduced by in the translation, but what is being described here is that metadata have to be introduced, and that there are particular international standards relating to metadata that will be used.
Corinne's point, although metadata is very important to everybody who thinks that their goal is to provide metadata, especially from the public sector, many jurisdictions have developed their own approach to metadata. If you're a user of open data or a developer, chances are you're going to want to bring data in from more than one jurisdiction. If we're all using different metadata, that can make that very complicated for the individual user. Our goal is to work with other jurisdictions to map our metadata against each other in order to be able to provide potential users with easy-to-use tools that will make the data from different places more interoperable, more comparable to each other.
You're using the term metadata, and I wonder if you can give an example or two of metadata.
Absolutely. Let's imagine that we have a data set that was just sort of crime statistics. The metadata would provide us with information on who was the provider of that data, so which department, whether or not there was a specific program or service within the Government of Canada that data was created to support, the date of release of that data, a description of the data so that you wouldn't necessarily have to go into the data to find out exactly what it contained, which is important because some of the data sets are very, very large. The frequency of the data, so how often it is published and renewed, these are the kinds of information that go into the metadata.
I'm not going to divert you into another topic, but there's been issues recently with CSE collecting metadata. And what you're describing basically is all the details related to a certain subject area. Is that right? Metadata is basically the whole picture, everything.
Metadata would be more of a set of descriptive tags to describe the data, but not the actual data. So, for example, it would be more like a set of factors, so time, frequency, title, provider, not the actual data that was held within the data set itself. So where it comes from, who it comes from, but not necessarily what the information is.
Data about data.
Thank you, Madame Charette. You use the terms open data and open government, and I can see examples where open data would have little to do with open government. For example, publishing weather data isn't really about open government. So could you describe the relationship between these two concepts, or actually there's two different initiatives even within the Government of Canada around open government and open data?
Well, to us, they're certainly interrelated, and in fact, our Open Government Action Plan has three streams of activity that we committed to in April 2012. One of them is open data, one of them is open information, and one of them is open dialogue. And in fact, the open government thrust is about making information and data widely available to Canadians and civil society so that they can use it for their own benefit, drive economic advantage, specifically in the case of open data, foster engagement, and generally contribute to society. So for us, open data is one of the three key streams of activity in our open government action plan. And in fact, most of the other countries that are part of the OGP have similar open data streams of activity in their own open government action plans, the UK and the US and many others. So in fact, most of the governments have published action plans that reflect those three streams of activity because they are separate yet complementary.
Mr. Byrne?
I think Mr. Connor sort of touched on something, as Mr. Trottier, but what is it exactly that we're talking about here? There is a presumption, I think, that when people hear the term open data, that implies the essence of open government, which the two are, you've clearly defined, are not the same. It's, as I understand it, open data is that which is already available or should be available to the public through normal access to information channels or through that which is already published but just opaque in the way people can access it, should be made available in a broader, more accessible format. I'll ask you to comment about that if you could, but in addition, I'll ask you, there is an assumption about cost recovery of data, the government a lot of data, through Statistics Canada in particular, has been providing information on a fee-for-service basis, on a cost recovery basis. Will this impact that by eliminating those costs? Does our membership in the charter, in the Open Data Charter, the GA Charter, does that imply that those costs will now be eliminated and made accessible, and the information made more accessible? And I guess finally, how far is this going to go? I was just perusing your deck there a little bit, and it says, just one example, what happened to the fish in my lake? And it lists a whole lot of environmental habitat and other ecosystem observations and reports that would be available. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans has access to databases of who catches fish and how much, but they don't publish those. It's available under the Access to Information Act if you constantly probe and ask them for it. Is that the extent of this? Is this where this is going? Will there be a PCO mandate or a Treasury Board mandate that says to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, you have to start publishing this data on a quarterly basis or an annual basis, and do so in a transparent and predictable fashion? So there's a few questions there. I hope you absorbed them.
Well, I'll try to address your questions the best we can. So first, on your question of available free of charge, that's an important part of our open data portal. So our open data assets are available free of charge. And in fact, Statistics Canada had formerly been charging for access to their data, and with our work with statistics and open data, or data.gc.ca, they have eliminated their fees.
Board now.
Well, that's all of the data on our portal is available free of charge, and that certainly is an important part of the open data construct internationally, and certainly one that we support. So if our data is available, we make it available. Now, of course, not all of our data is available all at once, simply because there is a lot of work by departments on preparing the metadata and preparing these data sets in the format that makes them reusable and easy to understand, compatible with the search tool on the portal and so on. So departments are going at it steadily, and in fact, in preparation for the Canadian Open Data Experience Apathon, departments really came together and made a great effort at preparing under a very short time frame a lot of high-value data sets that that had been requested by users of the portal, and they went ahead and did the metadata and prepared them in the right formats, and they were the subject, or they were available to the Apathon developers. So free is definitely an issue, is definitely part of the construct. The next point you question is about, and it's important to note, the Open Data Portal does not present information that is personal in any way. So there is no personal information. This is information that is completely impersonal, so to speak, and generally speaking is about topics, but would not tie a citizen's use to a particular topic or anything like that. We're very concerned, of course, with the protection of privacy across the government, and we work very hard to ensure that our open data assets respect that commitment to the protection of personal information. The last point that you raised, and I may not have gotten all of your questions, is that what is also important about open data is that from a federal sense, we have a lot of very valuable data assets, but our assets grow in value when they are combined with data assets at the provincial and potentially the municipal level. So the federal government only collects data in the realms of jurisdiction that we have programs and services in, and the provinces, of course, have their own programs and services, and they collect information of a slightly different nature. And to open data enthusiasts, the greatest value is when they can mash up data which is free and which is under a common license from all levels of government, and potentially one day internationally as a result of our work on the GA Charter.
I'll clarify that, Madam Chair. I used a poor example because I used the example of a lake, which is a provincial jurisdiction, but I was asking about a similar example, however, totally in the federal jurisdiction, which would be offshore marine and seacoast fisheries. Just as an example, that would be data that would be totally collected by the federal government and would actually have no provincial government participation. There is information that's collected by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, as similar to information that would be collected by Environment Canada and other things. So what my question really is, without muddying the question through the relationship of a federal-provincial jurisdictional issue, on that which is strictly a federal issue, will there be a directive that will be given to departments as a result of Canada's participation in this initiative that says if you have data that would normally be collected and disseminated and made available through the Access to Information Act to applicants, you're not publishing it on the portal, you're not publishing it in a way that's transparent and clearly available. You have a responsibility and a mandate to publish it. Is that part of this initiative?
Yes, in fact, that is one of our commitments to our Action Plan 1 that was published, which is the directive. And in fact, we're working hard on that to essentially give departments guidance in how to conduct inventories of the data they could publish and how to identify what they have already published and over what time periods they should be publishing the data sets that they're already collecting or working with as a result of different programs and services. That's certainly part of it, but of course we have to do this in a way that respects departmental resource constraints and in fact their ability to maintain the integrity of the data, frequency of refresh, having the right curators, if you will, available to ensure they can respond to questions and so on. But absolutely, we are working hard in that regard to give guidance that will require departments to publish more of their data sets.
It's very helpful. Thank you.
Je vais laisser la parole à M. Martin. Ensuite, on pourra...
On the floor over to Mr. Martin, and then we can begin the second part of the presentation with the demonstration.
It's useful to take a minute or two now, even before we proceed to your main presentation, so committee members have a better grasp on the scale and the scope and the magnitude of what it is we're trying to achieve. And there are still questions to me. Just as I think I get it, I realize that I don't quite get it, and there's more here than meets the eye. You mentioned the meeting in Northern Ireland where the G8 members committed to the G8 Open Government Charter. Is that how you phrase it? I guess my questions are twofold. First of all, the Open Data Initiative, there's great hope and optimism throughout the land amongst the access and privacy communities that maybe this is it, that no more will we be frustrated by access to information requests where it takes 1,000 days and costs $10,000 to get a tidbit of information out of the government. It'll all be there and we can simply go and look for it. That's the best case scenario that everyone dreams of if it's true open government. But my question to you would be, who gets to decide what is revealed on the open government portals? Who will do the editorializing? Who will do the, what do they call it, when you black things out? Redacting. I mean, you must have a department of redaction that will be carefully redacting everything that the government doesn't want to release now. Surely they don't want to release then. So that's the first question. Who does, in your world, do the editing? And second of all, Mr. O'Connor hit the nail on the head with his first question. This issue of metadata, I see that the third commitment in the Open Data Charter of the G8 is to contribute to the G8 metadata mapping exercise. Now that's where this CSEC comes in. 2,200 employees in a building worth $1.2 billion are doing this metadata tracking. So I guess my question is, the budget and the scale of this initiative, if you include, how many thousands of employees do you have in the Treasury Board that are engaged in this? What is your total budget? And why does it take 2,200 employees to track the emails that Canadians send to each other as per our obligation to this G8 metadata mapping? And maybe you could expand a bit on what that commitment is, too. I mean, are we involved in an international tracking of what everybody is saying to everybody else in the world? Is that what's costing so much money?
Well, one thing it's important to clarify is that the mapping of metadata exercise referred to in the G8 Charter is really about standardizing the type of metadata. It's got nothing to do with what CSCC does or information that they do or they don't collect. It is about defining standards for describing data sets internationally. So that if, for instance, we are going to define standards for how we would describe a lake and the geospatial qualities of a lake, that all jurisdictions would describe those geospatial properties with the following 4, 5, or 6 attributes, and that these would be understood internationally, so that if we were mashing up data about a lake from data sets in the UK, the US, and Canada, we would be working with the same kind of data, but from individual data sets with information from different jurisdictions.
So let me get that straight then. You're not mapping my correspondence to Mr. O'Connor during the night after hours. The things that I say to him back and forth regularly is not what you're trying to track.
We're not tracking anything. In fact, metadata and this mapping exercise, and so you raise a good point, and we'll have to be a lot crisper with our terminology, so thank you. But this mapping exercise is really about aligning the data standards for how we describe these data sets internationally, and ensuring that developers and civil society can mash up open data sets internationally, because that's really the value, be it in health, in environment, in in economic terms, whatever. Do we describe this kind of data the same way? Because that's key, number one. Number two, in terms of the number of employees we have doing this at Treasury Board Secretariat, I think it's about 10. Wow. That's the extent of our department. So but I can guarantee you that we are not over-resourced to do so. And we work with colleagues across the departments and agencies in the federal government who a lot of the times are not dedicated open data specialists. Quite the contrary, they're working in program areas, and they are doing this because they're equally committed to open data. The last point you raised, and you highlighted the difference between open data and open information, if I might. So open data is not about access to information, although it certainly is in support of accountability and transparency and trust in government. Open data is about making the data that we do collect, this really machine-readable fundamental data, available. Open information is about publishing documents or reports online, which would eliminate the need for an access request for those documents or reports. So for instance, right now, and also as part of our Open Government Action Plan commitments, we committed to publishing searchable summaries of ATI requests. And in fact, ATI request summaries have been available now for over a year, I believe, since we started posting the summaries, and people can go at the data sets and read through and select some of them and so on. So open information is another stream of activity in the Open Government Action Plan, but it is not the open data. So open data is really about discrete machine reusable data. And now you could have in the past received a data set in the form of an access or through an access request. However, you certainly don't need an access request. You can go online anywhere in the world, search through the catalog, as you will shortly see, and download it to your own computer, PC, your own CD, and work with it as you would like.
Donc, je vais vous laisser le temps de faire la présentation.
You'll now have the time to make your presentation, demonstration on the screens. And afterwards, we'll start our further questions.
With the page you can see up on the screen now, this is the home page for data.gc.ca. This is our one-stop shop for all of the open data that the Government of Canada makes available at any time to citizens, researchers, voluntary organizations, the private sector, the media. It maintains access and discovery of all open data. It also has some other open government activities, but I'm going to focus mostly on the open data. The page has been designed with large tiles, as you can see, so that you can easily find what all the features on the site are, so that you can quickly jump to the information that you're looking for. Key for, I think, for our conversation today is that tile in the top left-hand corner to search data. And I'm going to proceed as if I was a average open data user. I click on search data, and I'm going to pretend that I'm somebody who's looking to buy a new house, and I'm interested in what the safety is in the neighborhood that I'm considering buying a house in. I would type in crime, for example, hit submit, and all the data sets that are currently made available from the Government of Canada related to crime would come up. Now, oftentimes, there's a lot of data. So we need to be able to help the user filter down those results to a smaller amount so that they can find what they're looking for a little bit faster. I could reorder the data sets by alphabetically or by the date that way they were actually created or last modified and or relevance. I'm just going to leave it at relevance for now. The left-hand side provides a whole variety of filters that can be used to narrow down the search results. I'm going to keep proceeding as if I'm looking for neighborhood safety information. So I'm going down, I see under subject there's law. I click on law. The number of data sets comes down, still a fair amount. But as I move down the data sets looking for the information I'm looking for, I see crime statistics for Canada, the provinces, and the territories, and I know that that's the information that I'm looking for. I click on that data set, and this is the metadata. So this slide provides all of the information that we have on that data set. Who the publisher is, in this case, Statistics Canada, what subject it falls under, the date it was last published, a short description and title of the data set. And those for us are the mandatory metadata fields that must be completed by any department or agency that is making data available. Now, before I go into the specific information related to this data set, because I want to point out some of the features for each data set, I want to highlight the license, which is right here. This license is a significant point of progress for us working within open data. As Corinne mentioned, it used to be that individual departments would make their information and data available under a variety of licenses, most of which were several pages long and written in legalese that was very difficult to understand by the layman, and oftentimes there were specific restrictions on the reuse of that data. For example, most often you couldn't reuse that data commercially, for example. Our new license is written in plain language. It's extremely simple. It's based on best practices for open licensing internationally. And we are sharing this license with other jurisdictions within Canada, promoting adoption on a pan-Canadian level so that data users will be able to bring data together from multiple jurisdictions within Canada at... It's causing no feedback. Sorry about that. Multiple jurisdictions within Canada at both the provincial and the jurisdictional level that can be combined and mashed together. Now, I'll just go back to the data set. and point out a couple of more features. Back before we launched the most recent version of data.gc.ca this past summer, we held a series of roundtables across the country with the open data community to hear what it was that they would most like to see in the revised, revamped open data portal. They wanted the ability to be able to rate the data sets themselves and tell us what they thought of the data. They wanted to be able to provide individual comments on that data in the hopes that maybe we could perhaps improve that data. They wanted to be able to share the data easily with others. All of those features have been incorporated into the new data.dc.ca. You'll see that up here on the right-hand side, you can rate the data. It's a 5 maple leaf scale. You would simply pick the rating that you're giving the data. You can provide individual comments below and then submit, and it becomes part of the ongoing consumer rating of that data. You can share the data either via Facebook, Google, or Twitter, and you can provide comment on the data and share those comments with all other users of that data. If I wanted to download the data, I simply click on this on one of these buttons. The data is made available in different file formats to ensure flexibility of use by the individual users. The data sets are made available in French and English. There's additional supporting documentation to help the users use the data, and all of these are one-button downloads. Press the button and the data downloads. I won't do that right now. I should just mention, before I leave this page, there's an openness rating down at the bottom. We've incorporated the use of an international openness scale that's used by other jurisdictions to indicate the level of openness of the data sets. It's based on a 5-star scale. Most of the data that we hold is 3 stars and above. This speaks to whether or not the data is being made available in a well-structured format, whether or not you require proprietary software in order to be able to open the data instead of an open software program. And us in the US, the UK, a variety of other jurisdictions are using this scale. If I go back to the search page and pretend that I wasn't able to find the data set that I was looking for, up at the top there's a button that says, can't find what you're looking for. We're very keen to get feedback and information from potential open data users on what data they'd like to see that we haven't yet made available. Helps us to prioritize our work working with individual departments to have that data made available. If you didn't have the data and you clicked on that, you'd see a variety of data sets which have already been requested. So you'd look at that first to see if the data that you're looking for has already been requested, and if you saw it, you could add your voice to those who have already requested that data. Behind the scenes, what we do is that we work with this list and individual departments to find that data and try to make that data available, and then we update here on this page when we've been able to make that data available. So for example, here, the National Household Survey released in May 2013. Now when you click on that, it would take you to the actual data set. If you couldn't find the data that you're looking for, you could submit a new data set, and it would become part of this list. And again, other individuals would be able to come in after you and add their thumbs up or their support for getting that data set as well. Now I'll go back to the home page to show you a couple of other features specific to open data. Start with the showcase. We use this area of the site to provide examples and illustrate the use and the utility of open data. We keep a whole section called Open Data in Action, which provides information on specific projects within the Government of Canada, most of which are collaborative, working with other jurisdictions. that use open data specifically to inform a particular policy area. The oil sands monitoring portal is a joint initiative between Environment Canada here within the federal government and the Alberta government that specifically focuses on open data, and together the two jurisdictions make available more open data out to the academic world to support greater research. Also available through the showcase is an apps gallery, which provides access to a comprehensive listing of apps that have been made available and developed by the Government of Canada using open data. These apps are downloadable for mobile devices. If I click on the left-hand side, for example, and I wanted to find a specific app for my phone, I could click on mobile, and I could see all of the apps that are currently made available by the Government of Canada for download into mobile phones. Recalls and safety alerts, for example, is an app using open data that can be downloaded, and I can download the app straight from the site. Just a couple of more features of the site. I want to go to about data.gc.ca. So I want to point out that there's a variety of information resources that are put on this site that are for the open data layperson, designed to get them interested in open data and explain what can be done. We talk again about the license, making it clear that the data is available can be released and reused on an unrestricted basis. There's a frequently asked questions sections, and there's Open Data 101, which is a handbook on open data to get people who have yet to start really using open data sort of off the ground with the basics of what open data is and how it can be used and how to work with open data. And then at the other end of the scale on the site, there's a developers corner, which is really for the open data user who has some experience already. Potential developers, for the most part, people who are interested in building applications using federal data or federal data combined with data from either the private sector or other public sector jurisdictions. Here we have a little bit more sophisticated information around working with data sets, how to use application programming interfaces, which are a software tool that makes access to data which is changing frequently within the federal government more easy to use if you're building an app that is going to want to access that data on an ongoing basis. Information about our metadata element set, and again back to Open Data 101. I think that really brings me to the end of the tour.
So with that as a demo, before we embark into the third and concluding part of our presentation, would there be questions about the demo?
Des questions précises sur cette présentation, Madame Ablancé?
Nancy.
Yes, you mentioned on page 15 that since the launch of the Open Data Portal in June of 2013, there have been 88,000 downloads. I wonder if you have if you've triaged the kind of downloads that have been made, and if you can tell us what kind of data is in hottest demand.
Right. This is them right here. So I should have shown you before. There is a page that actually provides information on the current top 25 downloaded data sets. There's also information on how much traffic the site is getting on a month-to-month basis. The total number of departments that are contributing data sets, how many data sets from each department, and so forth. This page is updated on a monthly basis because it continues to change. Data sets which are very popular in 1 month can move up and down that scale from month to month.
These are monthly statistics.
Okay, thank you.
Madame D, la question également.
Oui, j'aimerais.
I have two complementary questions. I did see that it is in fact a type of mapping, cartography, I wasn't familiar with the term mappage. I'd like to know whether you have any links with the private sector, with universities, with research centers. Are there interlinks that are available with these groups so that the open data can be regularly improved? And if I put in a particular word in Google or in some type of research tool, will it come out among the choices that will be made available for the information that is being looked for? I'm thinking, for example, delinquency or environmental situation or a particular word in relation to which data are being sought. With respect to links with the private sector, we don't have a formal links as such. We were happy to see in the last budget that a reference was made to the Open Data Institute in Canada and the UK and in the United States. This is a particular movement. It's a non-profit group that brings together the private sector, academic sector, and all the groups interested in this particular evolution so that they can work together in Canada in a coherent way. It was mentioned in the budget, and we will have our Open Data Institute in Canada. And we'll be working then with this organization, with the provinces and the municipalities. And they have links with universities and so forth. When it comes to the private sector, we do not necessarily have direct links, but we do have indirect ones in that they support this movement and that there are certain groups like ESRI. It has been in existence for some time, and its purpose is to promote tools and software enabling the best use of scientific data. This is a collaborative process. It's an informal one, but it's fairly extensive, involving all sectors so that more open data can be made available for the benefit of everyone. When it comes to Google, yes, I can answer this part of the question. We make sure that all the information that is available in the portal, anything that would be available in the portal will be available through other research engines like Google and so forth. It would be possible to obtain the same results through a Google page using the same keywords. The advantage here when we're talking about mapping with the other governments would be facilitating this research so that Google can obtain the data for Canada as well as the data for the United States, the United Kingdom and so forth. We facilitate this type of research through research engines, and it makes it easier for us to make this information available to citizens.
I appreciate that all the data on the Open Data Portal is provided free of charge. And I was looking at the app gallery. Presumably all the applications there are also provided free of charge. I was wondering, are there any mechanisms where, say, a private application developer develops a great app, does the government buy that application and then in turn provide that to citizens free of charge?
It hasn't happened yet, but I suppose that it is possible. I think our biggest wish is that the data that is made available by data.gc.ca trigger new development external to government, and that some of those tools, some of those new apps are useful to citizens. I think that most of the time they'll want to distribute those themselves, but I certainly will be watching carefully, as we will be with the results of the code contest that just finished this week, where we expect to be looking at over 100 new apps. And I think one of the things that we're really interested in is whether or not any of those apps would be good for use by the federal government.
If I can just add to that question, if there's a great private application that was developed, and so there could be a transaction between a user of the app and the app developer, are you allowed to promote that application on the website? Are you able to, because really it'd be promoting a private interest.
The apps on our website are free apps.
Yeah.
Now, developers that create apps using our data and anybody else's data are free to decide to sell those apps and put those apps on the Apple Store or, you know, any other app gallery out there and actually charge money for them. But we would not necessarily promote those or put them on our app gallery.
No, not yet, for sure. Okay. Thank you.
Monsieur Martin, maintenant.
Well, I appreciate all this, and it's helping to, I think, to give some definition to what type of information will be put up for open. But if the default is to be openness, I mean, that's an important directive, because currently the default seems to be secrecy. That unless it's like pulling teeth to get sensitive information out of the government through the access to information regime, and even though you say this is not set up to replace or to do the job of ATI, you do mention in the opening page of your data.gc.ca that this is really an extension of the Access to Information Act, the spirit, if not the letter, of the law. So I'm still suspect, and I'm still interested, but you didn't answer my question as to who screens, who ultimately gets to say what goes up and what stays down in terms of the portal. Is it the minister? Is it the government of the day? Or is there some overarching authority, an independent authority like the Information Commissioner that says, you know what, cutting the hair of Afghan detainees should be public information, and it should go up on the porthole, and you shouldn't have to wait 1,000 days and go to court to find out if you cut the hair of the Afghan detainees or not. Who's your boss that says what goes up and what does not go up?
Well, there's two questions there. So first, in terms of data sets and what data sets are made available for publication. So the first thing that's important is, of course, what's on the Open Data Portal is not classified information. So clearly, it is not information that's classified as secret or confidential, because it's information that is public and should be made freely available. So the data sets themselves. Now, within departments, and you know, there is a wealth of data and data sets that are yet not published. While we're very proud of the 200,000 data sets we have on the portal today, we believe there is a lot more, and that is the topic of the directive, or the focus of the directive, to require that departments conduct an inventory of the data sets and then prioritize those data sets with our help. We work with them to identify high-value data sets and help them to make them available. Ultimately, the departments have to be in a position to maintain and assure the integrity of the data, so and that the data that they are promoting.
Who's going to catch something? Let's say the government department thinks that it should be released. I mean, we've had cases where ministers' assistants dive into dumpsters or dive into postal boxes to retrieve access to information that they decided, oh, we better not release this. I mean, who's supervising what gets put up and released, and what is held back for whatever justification the minister might see fit? But just before you answer that, also the final question I have is, what's to prevent the data mining of users of your new open government portal? We were all horrified to learn that during the AGGA-Cons, the interactive tracking of the AGGA-Con, that whoever signed on is now part of a Conservative Party fundraising mailing list or something. Who's to stop the data mining of information that of people who use your service now? There's going to be patterns developing. Is the privacy of Canadians who use this portal going to be protected and shielded so it doesn't get harvested and into the SIMS database?
So to answer your last question first, the use and the download of these data sets is totally anonymous. So, and that is part of the privacy notice on the site. So there are no accounts. You don't have to create an account to download a data set. You can download it, and we do not track that or keep that information. So we're very vigilant about that. And in fact, we also have privacy requirements when we get feedback, so that we can only keep the the information of the person requesting feedback, obviously enough time to reply to that person who may request some information. But we have very strict privacy requirements, and the use of the data is totally anonymous. So that's your first question, or your last question. To distinguish between access to information and open data. So departments ultimately will determine the speed and the schedule of publishing data sets. But this is not access to information. So access to information will still go along. Canadians may still pose an access request. Most access requests are not about machine-readable data. They're usually about reports, documents, memos, et cetera, et cetera. So access to information will continue. Now, we have in our Open Government Action Plan a few other commitments that support the open information stream of the Open Government Action Plan. In particular, with Library and Archives Canada, they have, since the first version of the plan, they have moved on our commitment to declassify and make available, I don't have the exact statistics, but a number, almost 10 million pages of information that was formerly classified and not available, and that information is now available through their website and freely available to Canadians. So that's in the stream of open information, in addition to the searchable summaries of ATI requests. And we also have another commitment working towards the virtual library that will allow us to publish more information online in order to avoid unnecessary access to information requests. So we're working through these commitments one by one.
Je vais maintenant passer la parole à M. Adler.
Adler.
I have two questions, but I just want to preface my questions by making a couple of comments. Number one, Mr. Martin talked about ministerial assistants jumping into garbage bins. If he has any evidence of that, I'd like him present it to the committee. And second, it was our government that's been the most transparent in Canadian history, and the numbers demonstrate that in and of itself. So Mr. Martin's playing fast and loose with the figures, but I'd be very interested to know any details of any ministerial assistants jumping into dumpsters. If he could table that with the committee, that would be very helpful.
Happy to, Mark. We'll get that over to you.
My questions are, you mentioned earlier, Mr. Walker, about roundtables that you held, and I'm just curious to know no need to be specific in terms of who was around these tables, but just what types of companies were involved in these discussions. I'm just curious.
Our approach was to work with municipal governments in a variety of individual cities. So Edmonton, for example, we would work with the Office of the City Clerk. In Edmonton, they have quite a robust open data initiative of their own. We asked them if they would help us to contact local users, local companies, the post-secondary institutions, civil society organizations, government representatives as well. We created the widest possible invitation list we could and sent it out and invited them all to come for a day.
Private sector institutions. Okay, thank you. And my second question is, in terms of the data sets themselves, how are they organized? So, for example, if I was looking at crime statistics, is there a way of determining by, for example, geography? Where, if I'm interested in just a specific area, geographical area, would it be possible to mine the data for that kind of information on crime statistics, for example, or any other kind of data sets, or does it just kind of broad statistics that you have to kind of take with a national sort of perspective?
There's not one answer to that question.
Okay.
But for a significantly large number of data sets, including the one that we're talking about, there is geo-specific information included into the data set. so that you are able to find which statistics are being applied to which particular area of Canada. We can do that for all of the data sets for which there is some kind of geolocating reference within the data set, which is a large number. StatsCan specifically, for example, Environment, NRCan, most of this information has some kind of geo-specifying element. So yes, you could map the data across Canada.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, thank you so much.
Monsieur O'Connor.
Thank you very much. I know these sites, they're called open data and they're open sites. However, I think also about the security side. Are these sites protected in some security way from hacking? Because you could have, we have histories of it, you can have a hacker get in there and provide a whole bunch of data that is not open data and it's out into the public. Is there any way of, protecting our system against this kind of thing? And then I have a second question.
I think most of the Government of Canada external-facing sites are subject to the same protection regime. The protection around data.gc.ca might be a little bit higher than other states, but it is maintained outside of the firewall, not within the firewall of the Government of Canada. Sorry. Oops. Sorry. So far, we've been up and running for 3 years now through the various versions of data.gc.ca, and no incidents so far. And we just ran, as Corinne mentioned, the code hackathon over the weekend, and we've put in place specific protection regime in order just to bump up a little bit, and again, no incidents.
My other question is about Crown corporations. Are Crown corporations involved in this activity? And if they aren't, why aren't they?
They're included in the request. So we have gone out to Crown corporations specifically when a data set has been requested from an external user. Our job is to see whether or not we can actually get that data, and we've gone out to Crown corporations. We've also sent out general requests for data out to Crown corporations, but they won't be covered under the Directive on Open Government.
But what you're saying, in effect, is you don't have anything from Crown corporations.
We have a few data sets from Crown corporations now, but we also could perceivably make data available that we have not received yet from Crown corporations.
Merci. Maintenant, juste avant, vous vouliez rajouter quelque chose, Madame Charest?
Crown corporations are quite collaborative. CMHC has reached out to us and is interested. We haven't put a focus on getting data sets from Crown corporations yet, but certainly that is something that we will work on over this fiscal year to try and expand beyond the government departments and agencies on Schedules 1 and 2 that are the focus of our information management policy and directly the focus of the directive. But the Crown corporations are, by and large, very collaborative as they see value in making their data available to Canadians as well.
Under that, it would seem to me that Crown corporations are more likely to be the sources of information that the public wants than departments. They have particular functions that relate to the public, and it would seem to me that they should be at the forefront of this information.
Merci pour vos commentaires. Juste avant qu'on passe à la troisième section.
This is a comment. We'll be now turning to the section 3. First of all, Ms. Day has a question. I think that Mr. Martin's question is an interesting question, a relevant one, and I looked something on my iPad. I looked up airport and I found where the airports were located, maps, pictures, and so forth. I turned to Data GC Canada, and I looked under airport, and I saw that the information was that you're not able to find the information requested. Countries that are members of the G8, France, Germany, and so forth. Can you tell me whether there are links that are available? If these would be available on Google, why would they not be available on the hyperlinks that I referred to previously? or is it necessary to take a look at the structure, go through the structure as it is shown? I'm looking for indicators of quality and so forth. And under this, I was able to find what I was looking for. But you told me that if I looked with a research engine or a tool like Google, I would be able to find it. Will I be referred to external links that will give me the information I'm looking for? The answer at the present time is no. The site of the Canadian Government Portal allows to find information that's data from the Government of Canada. However, we do have international collaboration with other countries and with provinces and municipalities, and we are looking for something that might be of interest to users. And in the coming years, then we'll attempt to create the most possible links between the various portals in different jurisdictions so that it would be possible to navigate quite easily between these various sites. But at the present time, our portal is limited to Government of Canada. Are there agreements with the G8? The agreement with the G8 provides for standardizing the data so that information can be facilitated. But there is no mechanism as such that create links for navigating between the countries. So I think that Mr. Martin's question is quite relevant. Who will decide what data are available? And I think that this is a very useful site. It's extremely useful to have such information being made available, but the question remains, if we're talking about climate change, for example, and we're looking for information on this, we're not able to find links with other ones, but you say that this is something that will be done in the future. You have the floor now for the third part of your presentation.
Presentation, so we'll jump to page 18 to just give you a wrap-up of the specific initiatives that we're working on with our federal government colleagues. So there are three important international initiatives. We've talked a bit about the G8, the Open Government Partnership, and the International Aid and Transparency Initiative. So the Open Government Partnership was by far the first international initiative that we participated in with our signing of the charter and joining the partnership. And then in June, the G8. What's to note is that the UK was the co-chair of the Open Government Partnership in 2013 and was also, of course, the host for the G8 Summit. And they are very strong open data enthusiasts, which is why we saw the work on the charter that was quite fruitful. On the IATI initiative, CEDA has been working with this international initiative, and we're very happy to showcase their work in this regard as part of the Open Data Portal. And these are the topics on page 18 that internationally are of the greatest value. So in fact, the sharing of scientific data is very important on an international front. On page 19, I'm very pleased to say that Canada is amongst the leaders on open data internationally. We are working on the Open Data Working Group. It's co-chaired by us. It was launched in October 2013 by the OGP, and to support open data work by all OGP member countries. And there are, I don't have the exact count of OGP member countries today, but there's over 60 of them. And not all of them are as advanced in their open data efforts as Canada, the UK, or the US. Some of them are smaller, developing economies and so on, and so they benefit quite a bit from our work with them in this regard. And the work is focused on the four themes. As part of the G8 Open Data Action Plan, we have a sub-action plan for the Open Data Charter that was published in February 2014, and it commits us to the proactive release of high-value data sets identified by the G8 countries, which we're very pleased that most of those high-value data sets identified by the G8 were already published by Canada, and we continue to work down the list of the high-value data sets identified by the G8 to close that gap and working with civil society. On page 20, we, as a result of strong support and sponsorship by Minister Clement, we continue our work on open data. The Canadian Open Data Experience, we are hoping to repeat on an annual basis, and we'll certainly also collaborate with our provincial and municipal colleagues whenever we can on their own apathons. We continue to make progress and achieve the commitments we stated in Action Plan 1 and are currently working on the second version of our Action Plan for Open Government that is a requirement of our membership in the OGP, and that will be published towards the fall. Open Data Canada is an important, ambitious commitment. As part of our work on the Action Plan 1, we were asked to make an ambitious commitment for open data in Canada, and what we proposed is that we are working to get to common license across Canada in all provincial, territorial, and municipal jurisdictions on the use of open data. We've already got 4 provinces, a number of municipalities. Quebec and their municipalities also announced their own initiatives in February. In fact, the same form of license as ours, so they're now in the same fold, and we continue to work with the remaining provinces and territories and municipalities to make Open Data Canada a reality, which will allow us to really mash up data with the same license terms across all jurisdictions in Canada. The work of the Open Data Institute has not yet begun, as it was just announced, but we are working with the founders, and will be strong collaborators for their work to ensure that that we benefit as a federal government and that all citizens benefit in this. We will continue to chair the OGP Open Data Working Group, as well as our work on the G8. I talked about code, so I'll jump over page 21. I will go to page 22. We are in the process of developing, with input from civil society, Action Plan 2 for the Open Government Partnership, and we are going to focus in the second version of the Action Plan on implementing our directive on open government during this the upcoming fiscal year, certainly accelerating the release of other high-value data sets and more apathons. And we will probably, if we're able over the next fiscal year, come to a third version of our portal. It is an open source portal. It is supported by work that is done internationally and with our partners in the US and India that were the source of the portal, but we're also working internationally with, I think, the UK on greater search capabilities and other features in the portal. And of course, we'll continue our work on international standards for data and metadata and interoperability of the data sets between jurisdictions. On page 23, just a bit more description of what our ambitious commitment Open Data Canada is all about. But again, it's about harmonizing our work across Canada, and would be quite significant for us to achieve that. Would certainly, I think, be very useful to civil society to be able to tap data sets across Canada without any challenge to usability or licensing. And we're certainly looking for a federated discovery approach that will allow a Canadian to perhaps enter through BC's Open Data Portal or Ontario's Open Data Portal and find the right data, be it from Ontario, BC, or the federal government, or any municipality, and work with that freely. And this movement has seen a very strong collaborative philosophy. It's really the basis of open data. It's all about collaboration between all levels of government and civil society and the private sector. And it's really very exciting, and we're very pleased with our results. On page 24, we talked about the Open Data Institute, so we will look forward to progress, and it does have partners, including Open Text, Communitech, and the University of Waterloo, so it includes certainly the private sector as well as the academic sector in developing our work, similar to what has been done in Britain and in the US. On page 25, it's a little bit of work on our OGP, Open Data Working Group, and we've already shared our open data experience with a number of OECD countries. I think we shared it with Colombia, as I recall, and we're also sharing with Mexico, and in fact, Canada is quite determined to continue to collaborate in this regard. On page 26, more, I've mentioned this. So with that, I think that we've touched on all the key points about our work on open data. I certainly hope that we have advanced your understanding of the key concepts and the value of this and of our efforts and our achievements from a federal government perspective. So with that, we're happy to answer any further questions you may have.
Merci. Donc, j'ouvre les micros, mais on va prendre la liste, les tours habituels.
We'll follow our usual practice. Mr. Martin, you have 5 minutes.
Didn't realize we were going to formal rounds, but I'm happy to perhaps pick up where I left off. I'm still interested, and I don't think we've received a concrete answer. What is this costing us? I mean, what is the total cost to date invested or associated with implementing the federal government's open government plan? I've already cited how it compares to, or how we're kind of shocked at the amount of money that we're spending on spying. I would hope that we're spending a corresponding amount of money on the inverse, in openly and freely sharing information. The public has a right to know what their government is doing with their money. So if we have 2,200 employees down at CSEC with a building alone worth $1.2 billion, and you have 10 employees at Treasury Board Secretariat, what is the corresponding budget in this open government initiative?
Well, the reality is it's a very small budget and very efficient operation. But I'll explain why. Open data and our open government work is really about leveraging the assets and the work of all government departments and agencies. So, for instance, Environment has been publishing weather data for many years and has the infrastructure, the program, and policy support, and all the public servants who work at Environment on, weather data and so on. As NRCan with the geospatial survey, or
you're not doing the original research. You're just pulling it all together. But I only have 5 minutes. Could you give me a dollar figure what you spent to date, and what is the projected cost to December 2015 when you expect to be completed?
We don't really measure it that way because it's not a specific program. It's not an official program. What we have is we have a Treasury Board cost, which I would say has been, in this fiscal year, less than $1.5 million to cover employees and other expenses we have. And we foresee probably similar expense levels over the next 5 years from a Treasury Board Secretariat perspective. And departments and agencies do not segregate their costs on open government because they're part of their program and policy costs. So we don't dissect them and we don't roll it up. It's not a formal program. It's really leveraging assets, knowledge, and information that's available, but leveraging it smartly.
Okay, thank you. About $1.5 million. How much money have you allocated to advertising to promote open government, the open data portal, data.gc.ca, advertising budget?
To my knowledge, we have not got any advertising. We promote it online. We promote it through consultations, but search engines, but certainly we're not aware of an advertising budget.
Okay. The international component, I mean, when you developed the Open Data Charter, it was just at the 2013 G8 Summit, is that what I understand? So that's how recent it is. The United States was on board. That was one of Obama's first announcements, I think, when he was elected, wasn't it? How do our efforts compare to the United States in that? How far along are they? Are they finished their program, and are they in full disclosure of all they're going to disclose, or are they still putting it together the way we are?
Although the G8 charter is just from 2013, both the U.S. and ourselves have been involved in developing open data for a bit longer period than that. The G8 charter just had a couple of more specific commitments for G8 members over the course of the next couple of years. In general, the U.S. had an early start on us. They definitely had a head start. And we've pretty much caught up now. They have a lot of work to do in a system which is even more complex than ours in order to be able to dig the data out of individual departments and agencies. They have a lot more of them. I would say that the early leaders were the UK and the US, and now we would be considered to be up among those leaders.
And do you expect Russia to be as compliant as the UK and the United States and Canada as far as full disclosure, et cetera? I mean, what do you have to promise to be able to belong to this club?
It's difficult to say. They've just barely started, and we've been at it for 2 or 3 years already. So they have a ways to go to catch up.
Thank you. Merci, Monsieur Martin. Maintenant, Monsieur Trottier, 5 minutes également.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And one of the things we're going to be doing with this study is summoning certain witnesses who have some information and insight to add to our study. Hopefully, we can then assist you with your planning. Trying to get a sense of the various departments. You mentioned that they're doing certain things within. The reason you're small is because other departments within the Government of Canada are doing some of the effort. Are there certain departments within the Government of Canada that are well advanced and providing open data? Is it worth bringing them in as witnesses for them to describe? I'll give you one example. There's certain data that I'm very interested in, which has to do with immigration settlement patterns, because in Toronto, those patterns are shifting over time, and when it comes to providing settlement services, it's useful to know where are the immigrants going to, and it's more frequent than every 5 years of a census. It's every year, every few months, these patterns change. So, is a department like citizenship and immigration, would it be worthwhile to bring them as a witness, or are they just getting their feet wet right now with respect to this initiative?
No, they're well on their way as well. In fact, the CIC data sets are among the most popular, made available on data.gc.ca. If you look down to that list that I showed you before, the top 25, 8 or 9 of them, of the top 20 are CIC, and most of them related to immigration statistics in one way or another. There are certain departments which are way ahead because they've been doing it longer, or because the demand has been greater and they've had to get their feet wet a lot faster. So Statistics Canada is an expert. NRCan is an expert. Environment Canada has a lot of expertise as well, and CIC. The other major actor and contributor would be Agriculture Canada. Although there's almost 40 departments contributing now, those 5 departments are probably the federal leaders.
Okay. And amongst other levels of government, you mentioned Alberta, BC, Quebec, Ontario. What about municipal governments? Are there witnesses that you would recommend that we talk to gain some insight?
Certainly. In fact, there's a group of 4 municipalities that have been working together for longer than we've been working with the provincial governments in order to share best practices on the delivery of open data. Vancouver, Edmonton, Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, they're all leaders in this area.
Okay, thank you. But that's all the questions I had. I know Mr. O'Connor had some questions.
Okay. What is clearly not open data?
We've developed specific standardized criteria that departments must apply to data sets before they can contribute them to the Open Data Initiative. In order to be able to identify data sets that cannot be distributed because of personal information, security information, privacy, confidentiality, and we must own the data. If it's third-party data, then we don't make it available as open data.
Okay, the next one is, you talk about that this open data is going to create a larger economy, et cetera. What proof do you have that this will contribute to improving our economy?
Well, we don't have direct proof, but we do have, if you will, indirect confirmation. So there was a report by one institute yesterday about the apps economy, and certainly in the U.S. and in the U.K. there's multiple media references to this. We're not tracking the economic result of open data. It's very difficult for us to do that. We're still wrestling with performance indicators that we would use to measure success consistently for our program, as are the provinces and the municipalities. It is very difficult to make the link. However, the easiest link is the whole notion of GPS, which basically has made quite an economic impact and a whole industry of technology based on government data.
Then if you can't prove that there's any economic benefit, I don't think you should be touting an economic benefit until it can be proven.
It's for Canada, it's a little bit more of an extrapolation. I mean, we could certainly point you to 15 different companies that are using open data in order to make money on their bottom line. In the States and in the UK, that information, that analysis has gone a lot farther because they've been at it for a longer period than we have. Just about to come out south of the border is a list, much like the Forbes list, of the top 500 companies involved in open data. We're interested in getting a chance to look at that so that we might be able to extract that same kind of approach here up here in Canada.
Merci, M. O'Connor. Madame Day, maintenant, 5 minutes.
Ms. Day, 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions. There's an example I think that is a good one to respond to Mr. O'Connor, is cartography in the far north. I think that cartography in the far north is on the site here, and it is very useful to businesses that are interested in developing resources, and find where deposits may be and where the populations are located. Also environmental information about this area and their decisions on whether or not they will be investing. And I think that the open data does provide a lot of useful information. And the scope of this type of study on economic growth resulting from information, in relation to accountability, I'm interested in knowing how you make your annual reports to determine whether you are in fact compliant with the 5 objectives that you set out at the beginning and the various others that were added by the G8. How do you conduct this analysis to determine whether you are following your track and will be achieving the objectives that were set by the G8?
We have mandatory reporting requirements associated with the OGP and with the G8. On the OGP, it's an annual reporting process to define exactly what progress we've made on our specific commitments. And that reporting process is templated. It's standardized internationally around the globe, requires specific public sector consultations in order to be able to feed into the development of the report. Then the report is subject to third-party review. On the G8, little less mature at this particular point, because it was just this past summer that the G8 Open Data Charter was established. But there was a commitment made by all G8 countries to involve themselves in annual reporting. So at the later on this year, the expectation would be that individual G8 countries would have to update on what commitments within their G8 action plan have been met, and the same thing again for 2015. But the reporting template has not been determined yet.
In your document on page 29, the government action plan, there's a reference to a dialogue with the population, consulting Canadians, and open regulations. I'd like you to explain to us how this dialogue takes place. There may be criticism, questions being asked. You would like to follow up in order to improve the system. I imagine that you don't receive a feedback from a huge number of people, but I'd like you to tell us whether there's other types of consultation that exist. How exactly do you engage in this dialogue? Last year, we did use various means in order to engage the population on feedback to the site. First of all, we have online consultations where questions can be put, and we also ask them for their comments or whatever questions they may have. Secondly, the minister did have a number of tweet chats. That is, he was online with a Twitter dialogue. And this is something that was announced on our site in order to encourage participation. And the minister also conducted a series of town hall meetings throughout Canada in various municipalities aimed at promoting open data in the various regions of the country. And I think he will continue to do so. And we're also in the process of developing at the present time our consultation plan for the second element of our consultation plan for partnership in open government. And we hope that in the coming weeks we'll be able to finalize details about who will be explaining how we will continue to engage the people. There's no more time left. Mr. Aspen.
Charette, you mentioned quite a number of times that it's just all about leveraging assets, and you've both referred to the U.S. and particularly the U.K. As being kind of leaders in this field. Are there any other countries that are kind of off the mark on this and doing well? And could you name them and describe them?
Sure. There are a number of other countries, perhaps not quite as close to us, so that we don't work with them quite as frequently. But Brazil is significant. I think all of the Scandinavian countries are very advanced in terms of open data. Australia and New Zealand also active in open data and in open government in general. As Corinne mentioned, there are almost 70 countries now who are formal members of the Open Government Partnership. The majority of those countries would have specific open data initiatives as part of their open government action plans.
And
so I should also mention that some of the really advanced open data work is at the subnational level. So in the United States, for example, at the state level, and here at the provincial level, and that holds true within some other jurisdictions as well, like Australia.
Okay, thank you. And where would you rank us generally? Where would you rank us? Kind of in the top echelon, middle?
We're at the top echelon.
We are.
Yeah, we weren't. The UK and the US and other countries definitely hit the ground running a little bit faster than us, but we've caught up. And you know, in many instances, that's helped by the relationship that we have with those two countries, so that the work that we continue to advance is now work that we're doing with them, and that has helped us to close the gap. So internationally, other countries, not necessarily the U.S. and the U.K., who also think of themselves as being in an upper echelon, but other countries will be coming to us for advice.
And is there much data set interchange among the countries?
The G8 Open Data Charter is specifically designed to support more comparison of data across the G8 jurisdictions in very specific sort of sub-data domains like budget, procurement, legislation. They want to be able to look at the data sets from different countries across the G8 in order to compare and contrast.
Thank you.
Merci. Finalement, Monsieur Byrne pour 5 minutes.
Mr. Byrne for 5 minutes.
You reference with some vigor the notion that privacy must be protected, which I think is reassuring to us all. But at the same course, very little, a lot of data sets will indeed include elements of personal privacy. There will be a reference to an individual, whether it be my example of fisheries or the Registrar of Indians, or a countless number of that which government measures often includes the measurement of people. And so there will be a reference to personal information. Do you take the decision to just simply not include that entire data set into open data, or do you redact, as Mr. Martin had alluded to?
And sort of revolutionary parts of open data going forward with our colleagues in the US and the UK is around new technologies that allow for the anonymization of data. I can say without hesitation that there's no personal data of any kind in any of the data sets that have been made available. So right now, when we're going out to individual departments to look for data, there can't be any personal data of any kind, not even a blip. So, but in the future, as we try to expand the amount of data being made available by a single department, we hope to be able to work with them to anonymize it so that it can still be made available.
Right. And just to expand on that a little bit, like under what parameters would that be the case, where you'd, you say, just to clarify that for me, you want to expand on it so that... Well,
within the government, we define personal data very specifically. It's a long list. None of those data elements can be contained in any of the data sets that we currently make available.
Some data sets already have highly personal information. Like, for example, if you look at a Government of Canada telephone directory, it not only lists the individual, but their position, and then you can cross-correlate with pay scales and so on and so forth. So is this a concern to the Open Data Project that data miners could correlate information provided through open data with other data sets which are not protected from a personal information point of view, and very purposely so?
Well, first of all, the government directory with names, titles, and telephone numbers is not personal. It is available online. So you can...
Yeah, that's public information, so that one's not really a concern. But I think if you're talking about, Canadian citizen client information being included in individual data sets, the reality is right now that because privacy is such a paramount concern to us, we have to be exhaustive about working with the departments to ensure that no aspect of personal data is contained so that it cannot be correlated with any other data set. And that's part of our work day to day with the individual departments.
How would the G8's assertion towards this initiative assist in crossing boundaries between jurisdictions? There is some information that Canadians would like to have access to that currently is not available because it involves a second jurisdiction, an international partner. Are there attempts being made to ensure that those that are members of this charter, that those boundaries be removed?
There really are. The charter specifically listed a large appendix of very precise data sets that each individual member state has agreed to provide by the end of the 2-year period. We all as well have to provide an update at the end of 2014 on how we're doing with those. Now, in terms of ourselves, as Corinne mentioned, and the U.S. and the U.K., the bulk of these data sets are already available. You can already compare them under the existing licensing regime across those 3 jurisdictions. Some of the other G8 countries are not quite so advanced, and the monitoring that will be done will be to help them to catch up to the rest of the G8 members.
One final question. With this, in terms of procurement, other governments have tendency to be very covetous over procurement data, internal procurement data. So, would there be a schedule or chapters that would include that which would be included in the open data within the G8 concept?
Procurement data was one of the areas defined.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Merci. Donc, je vous remercie de votre passage devant notre comité.
I thank you for appearing before our committee. We will suspend for a few minutes and then we will go on with the meeting. But I would like to thank you very much for being here and for your presentation about open data. That was very helpful. So we will suspend for about 2 minutes, and then we will go on with the meeting. We will resume. Order, please. So, as I said at the latest meeting, we were going to put the supplementary estimates to a vote, and some of our votes are sent to our committees. So, pursuant to Standing Order 81.5, we must put them to a vote. So, the most important part is the vote.
Council carry.
Division.
Avec distance, est-ce que le crédit
Division.
rubrique travaux publics et services
Shall vote 1C under Public Works and Government Services carry?
Shall vote 15C under Public Works and Government Services carry.
On division.
On division. Alors, merci. On continue. Shall
Going on.
Public Works and Government Services carry.
On division.
On division. Le crédit 1C sous la rubrique Conseil.
Shall vote 1C under Treasury Board carry.
Le crédit 15C sous la rubrique Conseil du Trésor est-il adopté?
On division.
Avec distance. Shall the Chair report the supplementary estimates C 2013-14 to the House?
Agreed.
Accepté. Merci. Alors, Les votes sont terminés. Juste un...
The votes are done. One last information point. We had asked the clerk to go and see if the president of the Treasury Board was available, but as he still is not available, so there's nothing else. So the meeting is adjourned until next Thursday.